So I'm curious, what do you think, right, we can look forward to for the next several years in this high-tech combined sleep science?
Absolutely. Again, Mark, I'll just start and you can join or, interrupt me at any point. I think that it was a great observation that you saw in terms of the global representation at tech conferences. And really that's driven by the fact that sleep is a global issue, or poor quality sleep is a global issue. And we're seeing the cost burden to that issue is so high globally. It's in the trillions of dollars. And so that's why the emergence of technology to help with that cost burden, and of course health burden most importantly, is emerging. And so we're seeing a lot of, number one, tracking, being able to track and define sleep, because as you know, it's very difficult to define and understand sleep. We're not awake during that time to understand what's happening to us. So we need technology to really lay out what was happening while we were in a state where we can't determine for ourselves what's going on. And also, I would say that the emergence of technologies is providing the scientific community also with a view of sleep in its natural state, how people are sleeping at home. And so I'm not at all surprised that you saw that. And we're really grateful that there are technologies that are helping us understand sleep better.
Yeah, and I'll just add a couple of thoughts to that. I agree with everything, and I'll say that I always look back and think sleep is a new field. It's a relatively new field in medicine. This is not like cardiovascular disease, right? So if we take that lens and say, we've been doing a lot of work around creating awareness, and that work has taken root. It really has globally. There's a greater awareness of sleep as a health behavior, as a pillar of health. And so we take that with a marriage of the growth of technology broadly and monitoring and health behaviors, and it's like the perfect storm. So you absolutely see a global representation at places like CES, and that's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so sounds like this is definitely a trend. Even within China, I noticed since 2018, I heard the government pass some kind of like policy in the whole medical field, ask a lot of high-end hospitals start setting up sleep centers, sleep clinics within big hospitals. So we can definitely see this become more and more important and a lot of change. And now going to the technology. But I think you both know there's so many different sleep disorders, right? More than 80 or 90 different ones where they recognize. So for this sleep technology, how much it really can do? I can think about, or I know, for example, help insomnia somewhat, because I treat a lot of insomnia patients. When they cannot sleep better, the first thing they want to do is to change something in their bedroom, including the mattress, right? And sleep apnea, I know Sleep Number has this wonderful tracking system, and the bed can move up and down. I think I mentioned before, actually considering buying my parents some, let them try. So these are good, but there are many other problems, disorders. What do you think? Can technology really cover those as well?
Maybe I'll start this one, Raj, if it's okay. We'll take turns.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, it's an excellent question. And it's a question I ask myself all the time when I see new technology come up. And I think that the onus is on the technology companies to not just stop at tracking, right? So we're going to get really good at tracking sleep. We're going to be able to tell you, and we already can in many ways, like how much REM you have, but people often even don't understand what REM is. They think REM is deep restful sleep, right? So the awareness is not even really there in some cases to have such fine-grained assessment of sleep. We have to move just beyond tracking to enabling people to really change their behavior and engage positively with sleep as a positive health behavior. And that's a lot harder to do. And I think that requires, and of course I'm biased because I'm a clinician, but that requires clinicians to get involved with industry to help move forward. How do we message information to help change behavior? How do we message the data to help engage people in the process of medicine when they need to be engaged in the process of medicine? And one of the things we're very proud of, two things I'd say at Sleep Number that we're proud of, and I know I've only been there for less than a year, but I should say that I've owned a Sleep Number bed for 22 years. Like I really believe in the bed. It's I was a convert long ago. But two of the things I'd say we're proud of is that our sensing is effortless. All you have to do is sleep. You don't have to wear something. And so engagement with our sensing is much higher than engagement with a wearable device, right? Because you sleep every night. And then the second thing is that we don't just sense, we do. You have options that you can change the bed to have better sleep in a very personalized way. Now, even incorporating temperature control, right? Where you can heat your feet, you can heat your core, you can cool your core. I mean, so there's a whole lot of opportunity to do, and we're not done there as well. And I'm sure Raj will speak also to the idea that everything we do is based in science. And I certainly, I don't think either one of us would work here if that weren't the case. So I guess that answers your question to a degree, but I think that technology companies have a lot of responsibility. When you see an opportunity in healthcare, you also have a responsibility.
Yeah, and absolutely, Mark. And I especially loved your comment about the marriage of clinical background and technology backgrounds. And, I think that's really important in utilizing, the expertise, the scientific expertise to even interpret some of the data that is collected by the technology components of a platform. So, movement, for instance, how do we interpret movement, and where are the thresholds with determining if movement is, if the movement we're seeing is dangerous or normal, so I think that is a really important part of any technology we see, is to understand the scientific backing or the scientific kind of information that was used to develop that technology. And I would say the other component, you said this perfectly, is we know that sleep impacts so much of our health. And, certainly the technology we're seeing today is just scratching the surface on what we can see in the future. And, I think we have a bright road ahead of us in terms of the growth of technology to uncover more and more sleep-related health issues. Mark brought up REM. There's a whole field of cognitive health, right, that we may be able to uncover through technology, and passive technology. So it's a matter of time before, different components of technology address a broader health spectrum than the big ones like apnea and insomnia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sounds like there's a lot we can expect from the advanced technology development in the future. And I think you touched on several very important points. And one of the things I'm curious is, after collecting all this data, especially in Sleep Number, I know all this metrics, right? Every night you sleep, there's a huge amount of data. How can consumers use this data? I know on the background as scientists, we do research, we can figure out, we can move the technology forward. But I'm curious on the consumer end. Recently, I've been writing something in Chinese to educate people about REM sleep, since Mark, you mentioned REM sleep. In China, actually, it's the opposite. Chinese culture, we think REM sleep is bad, right? It's light stage of sleep. A lot of Chinese think REM sleep too much means you sleep poorly the night. or if you remember you dream too much, that means a poor night of sleep. So there's a lot of misinterpretations and may lead to anxiety and other things. And if there are other sleep disorders in the picture, going to be even worse. So, and that often I see the problem with wearables, this tracking device is people got the data and then they are confused. They have their own idea how to make sense of the data. And then, of course, lead to even possibly poor sleep habits. Do you have any thoughts, suggestions to our audience, right? As consumers, as people who don't really know much about science, and what this kind of data can do to us? Is it more helpful or more harmful?
That's a fantastic question. And, I'll just start by saying that, every individual absorbs and wants to absorb information in different ways. And so it's really, I'll give you Sleep Number as the example because I know it so well, but we provide insights, individual insights in a way that no matter what your preference of absorbing that insight is, there's a mechanism to do that. So, when you first open the app in the morning, there's a very high level, simple indication of, kind of how did you sleep overall? And then for those who want to dig in deeper and look at what does that mean? How long did I sleep? How efficiently did I sleep? How long did it take me to get to sleep? That information is there and can be uncovered in the stepwise process. What was my HRV? What was my average heart rate? Those are things that some people don't want to know. It's too much information. So there's a method to how to uncover some of the information that is can reach all audiences, all consumers. But it is a challenge and it is a responsibility of technologists to be able to communicate to all different types of consumers as they need to see that material. Mark, do you have any other?
I totally agree. I mean, it health literacy varies, right? How much information, how much you understand something like heart rate variability dictates to some degree what it means to you. So my advice would be a couple of things. If you find yourself looking constantly at your tracker and feeling anxious, don't look so much at your tracker, right? The intention is never to create anxiety. We often talk about insights, and insights are extremely valuable if you feel confident that you can make a change in your life and that you can change the path forward. So these trackers become good for people who have a great deal of confidence in understanding, if I do this, I can look and see at the outcome. Another piece of advice I'd give to consumers is just sort of a rule of thumb of my own, is never make a decision on what you did and its effect on your sleep in less than 4 nights, right? Because you can always have a bad night or you can always have a good night. I also saw insomnia patients, and I would see some who would come up with what I thought were really kind of bizarre interventions for their insomnia that they felt worked because they tried it one night and they had a good night's sleep. So something like insomnia is naturally intermittent. And so you got to give it several nights of trying something to see if it works. And then, I would say the last piece of advice I would give is look, like Raj said, go as deep only as you want to go and find a metric that resonates with you. And then just try to follow that metric when you create an intervention for yourself. Like, I'm going to exercise more and see if that helps my sleep. Great opportunity to do so. Or I'm going to stop caffeine after 1 p.m. and see if that helps my sleep. Great opportunity to do so. Give it a week, follow that metric and see, and, be curious, but don't be anxious.
Yeah, wonderful suggestions. I definitely love this. I think it's very useful and people can just take them and apply them to their life. But at the same time, I think both of you mentioned a really important point, is this sleep is an individualized thing, right? This personalization of sleep habit, sleep need, sleep pattern. So everyone's sleep is unique. And that's also a message I keep on trying to hammer down to all my audience. But at the same time, I think each individual, they may not realize it or have a hard time to use this guide their own life, because we are social animals. We all somewhat compare to other people, compare to what we see on the social media, on the news. And so people possibly is not sure what their individual needs are. So I'm curious, in Sleep Number, I know you are evidence-based, really value research. That's what I really like Sleep Number too. So I'm curious, in Sleep Number, how do you plan or already been doing this to help people personalize their sleep need, right? How to use technology, use big data, all this to help people understand what their own sleep gonna look like, how to improve that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great segue to our mission. Like, our mission is to help people create, the best quality sleep through individualized sleep experiences, right? So, and I think that's what the success of this company has been about, so that you have control over the pressure of your bed, and recognizing, I mean, it was groundbreaking to recognize that oftentimes two people sleep in the same bed and they have different needs, right? So that starts with pressure, but it doesn't end there. It continues on to climate. It continues on to the articulation of the bed. If you have a cold, or if you have reflux or heartburn or something, and you want to raise the head of the bed, or you're a snorer. And so I think in our DNA, we understand that it's an individualized sleep experience. How we operate on that, is through multiple manipulations that you can use with the bed and the frame to individualize your experience, but it's not going to stop there. And I'm sure Raj can talk a little bit about algorithm development, but some of the things that we do, and other companies are dabbling in this as well, is we use our massive amounts of data to be able to develop algorithms to detect things like influenza. And when influenza is coming on for you on your side of the bed, and then to give you information about even the progress of that, and when you're likely sort of over the hump and getting better. And we can do that. We can do that because we have large amounts of data, and it's not going to stop at things like influenza. It's not going to be a rapid process because we're doing it in a very scientific manner. But those algorithms are built on large models, but they become individual. I don't know, Raj, if you want to add.
That's really great, Mark. And I think, just to build on that algorithm piece, that absolutely the ability to collect individualized data, not for the entire bed, but for the individual sleeper, gives us that opportunity to develop algorithms that can provide insights, trends around heart rate and heart rate variability, your specific trends, not someone else's trends, and to your earlier point about comparison, sometimes I know just within my family, we all kind of compare our data, but we don't compare it in a way. I think the language is a little bit different. It's not comparing, I got better sleep, you didn't. It's about, did you look at your HRV today? Or, hey, I noticed this about my heart rate last night and I couldn't fall asleep, maybe because I watched too much TV. It's a matter of conversation about your individual self and how your behaviors impact your sleep, and how your sleep impacts your behaviors. And you're able to see that in the data, and the digital experience highlights some of that for you, so you don't necessarily have to go back and have the brain algorithm yourself. Our algorithms point out certain things that are very specific to you as an individual versus even the person sleeping next to you. So it's fascinating, to be honest. It's such great opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the beauty of having data. And then we can build this sample and how to compare ourselves with a larger general pattern of sample, and also how we compare to ourselves, right, across time, ourselves which days, what kind of sleep is better, what kind of sleep is worse. So remind me of, psychological testing. When we do IQ tests, we often compare to the general whole national data, but we also compare to ourselves to see where we are, what can be done, which area need to be improved.
And I would just add, Yishan, that one of the reasons I think we seek the social comparison is because we lack confidence necessarily, sometimes in the metric and how it applies to ourselves. So gaining trust is a part of our job, right? We want to gain trust, the trust of our users, of our consumers. And so that's where science contributes as well. So, to me, I know to me and Raj, especially, this is very important that everything is guided by a good scientific method, by good scientific outcomes that we publish, that we, on our scientific advisory board, we have 4 of the world's top sleep scientists. So that we are hopeful that our consumers, our users, can go into this relationship with trust, so that the individualized experience is something that they can trust, and they don't necessarily go to the external comparison to say, does this resonate with you? Because sleep is really very individualized. I mean, health is very individualized.
Yeah, definitely. And from other than this data driven kind of like research and point of view, I'm also curious, like Mark, you mentioned earlier, sleep is such a young field, right? So we keep on seeing new research, new findings coming out, and there are new things guide us to think, oh, this way, that way, and this is a factor, or this factor can be applied in a different way than we thought before. So I'm curious, in Sleep Number, when all these scientists, researchers work together, how do you incorporate newly published research data into your existing research and data to use it to guide consumers even further?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, when Mark and I first met, some of our initial conversations were around the fact that, how do we decide on what our next item to tackle? Because as we said, sleep impacts our entire body, from cognitive health to metabolic health to cardiac health, you name it, pretty much sleep impacts our entire body. And so we see different publications that are coming out all the time. On a daily basis, we're tracking what new science is being published, what new science is being presented, and it's really a matter of trying to figure out, what our strategy and our capacity is, and our long-term roadmap versus our immediate roadmap versus short-term roadmap. Some of the science is very young, so we in order to incorporate that young science, we probably need to wait until it's more mature, and then we can determine how can we pull that in to impact a consumer. Other science is farther along. For instance, science around apnea. There's a lot of work around apnea. There's a lot of work around insomnia. Those are things that we can address sooner. We have, as you know, really amazing partnerships with the American Cancer Society. We have research collaborations with the Mayo Clinic, and we are continuing to look at some of these longer term impacts of sleep on different parts, on cardiovascular health, on cancer. So those are things that we'll eventually bring into the platform, but we want to make sure it's ready for prime time and the research is mature enough to present. So there's a lot of discussion and tracking and monitoring of research within the company. And we really have to, it's a balance of when to bring in certain research versus when to let research mature on its own.
Yeah. And I'll just add, we talked to our scientific advisory board, We get their advice on it. We also will look at our roadmap and say, we want to do things that we know we can influence as well with the bed and with our partnerships. And so, but Raj is right on in terms of, it's compelling to chase something new, but there's a lot that we know, like cardiovascular disease and sleep as well. There's a lot that we know that we can operate on with our large data. And I'll just mention, our users have the ability to contribute to the future of sleep science, and they do. So we have you can opt in into being open to research. We have over 325,000 people who've said, yes, I want to be a part of your research. And we can do survey research with them in a very short period of time, get 10,000 people in a study and follow them for a couple of weeks. And by the way, they all have biometric data that they're collecting every night. And they've been collecting before the study and after the study. And so we can really look in a sophisticated way at things like building algorithms. And that's their contribution to the field of sleep science. So it's also a nice way of generating hypotheses. We can ask certain questions. If we have an interest in something like reflux or snoring or apnea, we can ask certain questions and see how many people we have in that group and that cohort, and that gives us some indication as to whether this is something worth pulling toward our roadmap. So it is very exciting. I mean, that's often, I think, the best and the hardest part of the job is that there's so much opportunity.
Yeah, that's so exciting, and possibly like nervous a little bit, but at the same time very exciting, right? Like I'm also curious where this all technology and this development gonna go. And I want to touch on the business side a little bit, because I think a lot of things been changing this year. When I was in the conference, I noticed some company, they don't only do mattress, they do whole like home setting, right? Or bedroom setting, which I think is great because it's all in one. And if you want to improve your sleep, it's not just a mattress issue. It's a lot of different things get into it, including our cognitively, how we understand the sleep. And also, like my clinic, we notice, and I think this is a big trend, this telemedicine, this internet usage, right? And the internet gets faster and faster nowadays. And a lot of people start getting used to seeing doctors, getting help, getting resources online, much more than pre-COVID. So I think all this may get us all, business-wise, to somewhere different than before. So I'm curious, what do you predict the future directions or certain things you want to focus on first, or any like business-wise, right? The path, anything you can share with us?
Yeah,
I was just going to tee this up for you, Raj, because Raj is the expert in this, but I'll say that, as a company, we do have peripherals that we sell. We have our weighted eye mask. We have weighted blankets, and there's actually data. I just saw a study not long ago that a weighted blanket at a certain weight compared to your body weight can actually help increase the release of melatonin, which it was actually a very well done study too. So we do have peripherals, and you'll see more of that coming out that incorporate things like light and sound, and an acknowledgement that there are other things than a mattress. We don't see ourselves as a mattress company, as more we're seeing ourselves as a sleep health company. But and then I'll just say that we also have partnerships that we're working with partners who bring other things to the table. And Raj, I know you'll have a lot to talk about on that business side, so I'll let you handle that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to Mark's point, we announced at CES as well that we have a smart furniture that I think Mark was alluding to. And so the smart furniture has sound and lighting capability embedded. And not only is there a capability to have sound and lighting, but programmed sound and lighting. So they're both initiated and turned off according to a routine. So smart, kind of a smart furniture, as we call it. So those are definitely things that we're thinking about as well. To address your question about telehealth, absolutely, COVID, I know, accelerated telehealth platform, but even before COVID, we were starting to move in that direction, and COVID just gave us a kick in there. But I think telehealth merges very nicely with home health detection, because it is a mechanism. As we talked about earlier, home health detection is great, but then what do you do with that information? And telehealth provides a really great mechanism then to take action on that data, and enable clinical practice to view that data in a much more meaningful way than in the past, when we may have taken a physical report, or a printed out report from something that was sent to us by a technology. Now there's opportunity to integrate very cohesively with at-home technology and telehealth. And if we're looking at overall clinical trends, there is, just from a healthcare perspective, there's a lot more of a push and a movement of clinical practice going into health. We saw this long time ago, well before COVID, in just minimizing the number of days of a hospital stay and trying to move people back to the home. Just starting from something as fundamental as that, to now really accelerating how much care can we really have at home versus, really saving the hospital for the more serious type of care. So in that whole spectrum, as healthcare is moving to the home, and we have technology at home, that could be interpreted and used by clinicians, it's actually like a perfect intersection. And so telehealth is a great mechanism to kind of have, to have that merger, be actualized.
Yeah, I think this is great to hear. That remind me, I saw quite several companies focusing on senior health. And I know when we get older, right, at nighttime, we may have fall risk when we get up and from sleep and go back to sleep. And this walking distance in the dark could be dangerous. So I can easily imagine this home detection technology, or if you have everything incorporated in a sleep health environment at home, and then there's a lot of great things could happen from them for different age of population.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think you brought this up earlier about changes in sleep as we age, different moments in our life through pregnancy, or, different activity levels in our life, our sleep needs change, and vice versa. Our activity impacts our sleep. And as we age, there are situations where we may need articulation for recovery, or different types of heating and cooling and temperature adjustment as our bodies are changing, and detection and identification. So many health events occur at nighttime, even in our beds. There's such opportunity for us to address them in different ways.
Yeah, and already we've thought about things like under bed lighting, right? So when you get out of bed, the light can come on so that you can kind of navigate your way if you need to use the restroom and come back, and so forth. And bed detection can tell us how long someone's out of bed, right, for a period of time, at a greater risk maybe of falling, and so forth. We're also doing research that's longitudinal research with older adults who run the risk of health problems and progression to greater need of care when cognitive decline enters in. Now those are long-term longitudinal studies, but continually monitoring these biometrics to allow us to say, how can we, in a smart and scientifically sound way, detect the beginning of a situation so that we can give an indication that there might be a problem on the horizon. And so really, I think as a consumer company, that's where our primary focus is going to be is, and Raj and I were talking about this earlier today, is identifying the early situation. And then I think telehealth just lowers the bar for entry into the medical system, right? We're not going to treat medical disorders. We're going to help people identify when treatment might be needed, and then hopefully have the right partnerships to allow a seamless entry into the medical system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this. Just like what you both mentioned earlier, the resource of healthcare is limited. And eventually, we don't only want to keep an intervention model. We want really start develop more and more prevention model. And sounds like your company, right? Your mission, your goal, part of that is to think about how to really use technology, use data to help us prevent, predict early intervention instead of, really medical add on like this medical healthcare burden. And with this, if this can develop even further, I can imagine you guys can collaborate with medical providers, with other organizations, hospitals very closely, and then it's gonna be a full loop. Yeah, more severe issues professionals can handle, but before that, there's a lot of things you guys can provide.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I'll just say, like, having worked for a medical device company for 16 years and now working for a consumer company, the approaches are very different, and they need to be very different. And so it's really about developing those partnerships. Medical device companies have a hard time engaging consumers, right? They're further down the funnel. And in consumer companies, historically, haven't always, we understand, I don't want to say we, because I think in our company it's different, but consumer companies generally understand the importance of prevention, but they stop at a certain point. And so it's really about empowering the user to follow her journey, however she wants that journey to be, right? To make choices, to have choices, to be able to prevent exacerbation or condition, and to identify one that comes up when it comes up and be able to make decisions on where to go forward. So we're pretty cognizant of that.
Yeah. And I'll add that, at the time that someone is in the medical system, they've already discovered something that they need to address. But it's the critical time is before they've entered that system, when they're at home and they don't know that there may be something that they need to address with the medical community. So that's a blind spot. It's a blind spot to the medical community. It's a blind spot to the consumers themselves. So as Mark said, these are, technologies, and especially knowing our technology gives her that opportunity to find out about herself that, that she might not even know. It gives her that insight to then enter the medical community.
And Yishan, you said it yourself. You're thinking about buying one for your parents. There's a whole other side, and that's caregiving, right? I mean, we have this sandwich generation now where we're taking care of our kids and we're taking care of parents at the same time. We're often separate from where they live, and want to be able to do what we can to help our parents age in the way that they choose to age, right? And sleep is a nice sort of period of time. I mean, it's a third of our life, but it's a nice period of time to be able to monitor and detect for problems to occur. So, there's a whole other side to the peace of mind at being a caregiver, knowing that your person you're caring for is being monitored effectively.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm really excited, and I always love to talk about technology and sleep science. But a lot of time feel like these two fields are separate. Tech people really know tech, but they don't know much about sleep science. And sleep scientists or sleep doctors know a lot about sleep, but not very sensitive to technology. I'm happy to talk to you guys because you really combine these two so well and know how to talk to consumers, which I think is what our audience need to hear, to understand.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Appreciate that. We take great pride in that combination for sure.
Yeah. So this is almost the end of the show. So at the end, is there any last wisdom you want to share with our audience, or any resource information you want to pass out to our audience?
Raj, do you want to start?
You know, I know we touched on this quite a bit, but I just wanted to reiterate that it is a bi-directional relationship between the scientific world and the technology. And so, you know, I think that using Sleep Number as the example, not only are we providing consumers, not only are we using scientific evidence and scientific backing to provide consumers with a positive sleep experience and awareness of their sleep, but that sleep data is helping to drive new research, which then uncovers the relationship between sleep and, you know, anything else for the next generation of products to be implemented. So it is such a cyclical process, and that relationship that you just mentioned, that those two very critical pieces of the puzzle, having those two pieces working together in a give and take manner, just is one of the highlights of being at Sleep Number for me.
Yeah, and so I don't know if this is wisdom, but I'll share something. So when I think of sleep, your listeners are clearly interested in sleep, right? So at this point, when you're at the point where you're interested in sleep, just recognize this is going to be a wisdom about behavior change. The behavior change is not a straight line. Nothing in life is a straight line except for aging. Everything else kind of has its ups and downs. And have some compassion for yourself when you're trying to make changes that are hard and you're struggling. It's okay to struggle. Get social support, get support from others, get support from people, trusted people, and they could be trusted companies or they could be trusted professionals. Don't be afraid to ask for help from your doctors. Don't be afraid to talk to someone in behavioral sleep medicine if you have a sleep issue. That person will send you to a physician if you need to be seen by a physician. So, if you take it seriously enough to listen to this podcast, great. Congratulations. Keep taking it seriously, because it is a health behavior that can affect so much of your life. And understand that there'll be ups and downs, that you'll have good nights and you'll have bad nights, and that's completely normal. Don't let that freak you out or make you super anxious, and avoid making changes.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Thank you so much for taking our time, sharing all this wonderful information with us.
Thank you
for having us.
Okay.